In this short video, brought to you by the team at Jenni and Train, we're going to be talking about the things that you can do as a researcher to ensure that your research gets submitted effectively to leading journals. Putting your paper in the best possible shape before and during the submission process. One of the most important parts of the publication journey. You've selected a journal. Now you're going to make your submission to that journal. And how you do that, how you make sure that your article does have the best possible chance of acceptance with a great cover letter, with a great pre-submission inquiry potentially, with good peer reviewers, getting the paper successfully submitted, learning about the submission system, navigating the process is key. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Communication really is the key to successful academic article publishing. We've all got letters like this all of the time as academics. Often, as we'll talk about in this video as well, articles get desk rejected. They don't make it all the way through the submission process. And often that's because of things that authors simply haven't got right in the submission process. Cover letters, pre-submission inquiries, to name but a few. But communication is absolutely critical. Communication is key. So, your successful academic publishing journey will depend upon getting your article successfully submitted and making sure that it does have the best possible chance of going out for peer review. That's the first goal of a submitting research. Around 80% of academic articles get rejected because of perceived issues in the methods. That's important to know about at the outset. Why is that? Well, if you know that your method section is likely to have a problem during peer review, you can do things like get it checked by other researchers. Show your method section to other experts, other colleagues, other co-workers in your department and ask them whether they would make improvements, whether there's enough information in your method section for them to be able to repeat your study. Editors and peer reviewers often worry that if there's not enough information in the method section, you might be hiding something. By their very nature, if you've done peer review, you'll know what I'm talking about. They do tend to look for issues with articles. And if you know this beforehand, you can anticipate any problems that your paper might have. Discuss the strengths and weaknesses of your article in the text, in the discussion. Talked about structure and academic article writing in another of these short videos. Being open about your weaknesses is a huge positive as you navigate peer review. If you're open about what your paper cannot do, what it does not say, then that doesn't leave you open for those kinds of criticisms during the peer review process. Obviously though, you don't have access to a magic crystal ball, but you can put the time in at the outset of your article submission process to anticipate issues that reviewers might end up having with your paper. Talk to other colleagues. Communicate both with other researchers and with your editor and potential journal editorial team when thinking about putting your paper together. So let's talk about preparing to submit. Let's talk about getting your cover letter ready. Let's talk about potentially making a pre-submission inquiry. If you haven't yet got a journal in mind, you'll need to go through the pre-submission inquiry stage before you select a journal. So that's what this video is all about. Dealing with the submission process. If you haven't got a journal in mind, then maybe you'd like to jump back and have a listen to one of our earlier videos in this series in which we talk about journal selection. But today, in this one, let's talk about preparing to submit. Let's talk about getting the paper ready. Let's talk about making pre-submission inquiries, and let's talk about writing a fantastic cover letter to go with your paper. And a lot of this comes again from successful journal selection, from effective journal selection. Having a journal in mind before you begin the writing process really helps, as we talked about in an earlier video as well. But knowing which journal you're going to submit to can also help you to tailor your cover letter, your pre-submission inquiries to that journal to give your work the best chance of success. Remember, many successful writing and publishing academics, they don't start to write until they've decided on a target journal. So talk to colleagues, talk to us, make pre-submission inquiries to journals in order to help you with that journal selection process. Be strategic, save yourself valuable time. Check which journals your international colleagues are submitting their papers to. Make a ranked list of 5 to 10 in your field. Aim high, but choose appropriately. Of course, inappropriate journal choice is a key reason as well for desk rejection. Articles going into journals that are outside that journal's scope. We also recommend the use of preprint platforms and sending out pre-submission inquiries before you select a journal to make your submission to or write your paper for. Do have a think about whether it would be a good idea for you to send out several pre-submission inquiries. What are these? Well, pre-submission inquiries are simply inquiries that authors make before selecting a journal, before submission, sent to editors, sent to editorial teams, and asking whether the research, whether the article, whether the results, the outcomes, what you know at the moment about the study would be appropriate for that journal. They are a must if you're writing a review paper, because of course review papers will not be subject to the same peer review criteria as other research articles. It's very difficult to get a review paper published if you don't have a journal lined up at the outset. So, making pre-submission inquiries, selecting a target journal effectively, writing to journal editors. There's no limit to the number of journal editors you can write to, by the way. Write to as many as you like. 5, 10, 15, 20, with a short, succinct inquiry email containing maybe the title of your paper, the abstract if you have it, maybe some key results, asking the editor whether she or he would be interested in seeing this submission coming into their journal. Editors actually really appreciate it. What else can you do to speed up your article's chances of acceptance? Well, if you don't have an ORCID ID, it's a really good idea to get one. Why? Because many journal submission systems require the use of an ORCID ID in order to make the submission. That may be one of the earliest stages of the submission process. The journal submission system will ask you to create a login using your ORCID ID. And by the way, an ORCID ID is a unique identifier number created by the not-for-profit ORCID.org that differentiates you and differentiates your research from all other researchers, particularly useful for people to find you. Many people called John Smith in the UK. Which one are you? Many people with similar names in different countries, and ORCID ID means that other researchers around the world can easily find and identify you and your research. And it's also great because once you've signed up with an ORCID ID, you don't have to bother with putting your CV together. The system does it for you. It collects all of your published work, often your grant applications as well, anything identifiable published by you with a DOI, a document object identifier number, online, and puts them all together in your ORCID profile, which you can go in and you can curate. So it's a great way to keep your CV up to date without doing all that much work. Match your ORCID ID with your Google Scholar profile, for example. Make sure that you're getting credit for all of the research output that you put together. Make sure that you're also easily, quickly, and effectively identifiable when compared to other researchers. Particularly useful for researchers looking at your profile from around the world. Why not write to a number of target journals? You've nothing to lose. And don't forget to update our templates, by the way, with journal-specific information. Write to as many colleagues at editorial boards, give them some information about your study, ask them if they think your work would be a suitable addition to their journal. Don't forget to mention the name of the journal, of course. Don't forget to change the name of the journal when you put together subsequent pre-submission inquiries, because there's nothing worse from an editor's perspective receiving a pre-submission inquiry with the wrong journal name, or it's obvious that you're just sending the same email out to lots and lots and lots of editors. So let's make sure we get that right in the process. We also have a journal selection and submission checklist for you to have a look at here. Have you established the formatting parameters? Have you looked at the journal guidelines? Don't self-plagiarize. Have you written the document? Have you shared it and gotten comments back from colleagues and friends in your research area? Have you consulted perhaps with an editing service to make sure the English is up to snuff? The English is where it should be. You can of course use Jenni.ai in order to make sure that there are no issues with your English. Are you ready to submit the article materials? Do you have all the documents and information needed? The formatting, the title page, the cover letter, all of those submission requirements. Are all co-authors listed? Do you have all the information about all of your co-authors? Do you understand how to use the journal submission platform? There are three main ones that journals around the world are using: Manuscript Central, Editorial Manager, and a platform called Open Journal Systems. And have you also suggested some peer reviewers? Don't forget to double check your journal author submission guidelines as well before you get started, before you get ready to put your paper into that journal submission system. We've put together a handy field guide for you to understand the different kinds of editors that you might encounter during the manuscript writing and submission process. Because of course, the use of the term editor in English can refer to a number of different colleagues. There's the language editor, people like me, for example, who might work on your paper and help you with the English. Then there's the subject editor, or a member of the editorial board who might be looking at your paper when it gets initially submitted to the journal and deciding whether or not it should be sent out for peer review. A managing, decisioning, or editorial board member. And then of course there are the people who manage the journal on the business side, the corporate editors, the journal development editors, the journal portfolio managing editors who look at the journal from a business perspective. They may be responsible for all of the journals in a particular group, like earth sciences or environmental sciences or space sciences, for example. So those, a quick field guide to the different kinds of editors that you might encounter as a researcher working on academic papers, making submissions to journals. What you'll also need, though, as you prepare your article for journal submission is an absolutely fantastic cover letter. It's really crucial. In this step of the process, you don't want to waste the opportunity to sell your work. So don't be boring. Don't write something dull and derivative. Please consider this manuscript for publication in your esteemed journal, etc. is a waste of time. It's boring. It doesn't tell the editor anything that they need to know. It doesn't tell the editor to take your work seriously. And again, just like with pre-submission inquiries, if you're using a template, make sure you update that template with the correct information, because you don't want to end up in a position where it's obvious that you've previously submitted this research article to another journal. So this is key. Having an effective covering letter is really, really important. Maximize your chances of success. The cover letter is one of the first things, if not the first piece of the submission package that an editor's gonna read. Take it from me, I worked as an editor for more than 20 years. I always read the cover letter that the authors submitted, and often the authors didn't write all that much. Often the authors did not take the time, did not put in the energy to write a cover letter, or they didn't change the title of the journal in their cover letter from previously submitted versions, which is a big no-no and obviously will put your editor in quite a bad mood at the outset when processing your paper. So your cover letter has to tell your editor why they should be considering your paper for submission in their journal. Why is it interesting? What's the key takeaway? And why is this work important and interesting for their readers? Readers are key. And don't forget to put some suggestions for suitable peer reviewers into your cover letter as well. The editor may not use them. The editor may not be able or allowed to use them, but at least they're there. At least they're in the cover letter for the editor to have a look at and potentially use to select an appropriate peer reviewer. You've got to make sure that you do tell editors why the topic is important, why the results are significant, what's the key, the breakthrough. Why is this an advance on previous work? Why are you submitting to this journal? And don't forget also to put some reviewer suggestions into the cover letter. The editor may not use them, but it's better to put them in there in case. So this will help maximizing your chances of article success at that initial submission stage. You don't want to do this. This is a boring cover letter. There's nothing there. It's the worst kind of cover letter. And we do get lots of these. Nothing at all. Authors can't be bothered to write anything. They just think that something magic will happen when they make their submission. Of course, you think your work's great. You know why your research is fantastic and significant and groundbreaking and earth-shattering, but the editor and the peer reviewers don't. You've got to tell them as you make your submission. And here's another example of a waste of effort. A boring, dull, and derivative cover letter, it's a waste of effort. You do need to put more into this. You do need to make sure that you sell your work to the journal. Tell the editor what's happened so far. Tell the editor why your work is a big leap forward. What is new and interesting about your study? Why should somebody want to read this? Why is this important for that journal? And don't forget to include, as we already mentioned, a few suggestions for suitable peer reviewers. The editor might use them. In this video, we've discussed effective article submission, how you can make sure that your submitted research paper has the very, very, very best chance of eventual acceptance when you make that submission to an international journal. Brought to you by Scitrain and Jenni.ai, we've discussed the use of journal submission systems. We've discussed how to make pre-submission inquiries in the light of journal selection. And we've also discussed how to write a fantastic cover letter that really captures your editor's attention and, above all, gives your article the very, very, very best chance of eventual acceptance. Thank you so much for listening.